Okay, so the lag might catch up to you at some point. Might have to refresh. Um, okay, so for some reason my video crashed too. I'll just restart it now. Um, it will probably not be for too much longer, to be honest. I'm just doing some equipment stuff now, and I'm probably out after Q&A afterwards. My friend does a stream every Saturday night. Okay. So this is the build of Talk. Um, so when we look at this, I first want to look at your tactical abilities, not really taken. I mean, you know, it's complicated. There's a lot of things to watch out for. Basically, what you are telling me with this is you are running surgical strikes, which is a single target ability. You are also running scatter volley, which is AoE for cannons only. Torpedo high yield, which is single target. Intel team 1, which turns your ship invisible. Tactical team Beta 1 and Omega 1. You can, with reciprocity or tactical initiative in space, reduce your cooldowns and therefore make this halfways working. With getting away with just one of these attack abilities and putting in the surgical strikes in between. You basically have to realize though that AoE abilities in this game are just generally better. Not Yeah. So when you use something like cannon rapid fire, it increases your single target damage by like 30%, I think. But if you use scatter volley, it increases your damage to 125%, which is just 5% less, but you hit 3 targets at the same time, which is basically all the time because you have all those spheres flying around and all the little generators, and they are just basically always AoE situations that you try to take advantage of. So I wouldn't really go too much into single target abilities right now. There's just no real point to it. Also, the surgical strikes is more of a PvP thing because it triples your damage but it halves your attack speed, and that way it is basically um, only if it works perfectly, it's on par with other attack abilities. But it's really only good for single target spike damage that you don't really need, really. Um, Also, try to keep in mind that you don't actually need to run cannons. Now, I know this is a policy that everyone did when he started out playing this game, and when you start out, you just assume that the escort class is the one that is supposed to deal damage, and it's the only one that can mount dual heavy cannons. But understand that the damage of cannons diminishes over range by like 80% if you're at 10k from your target, and basically 8% per kilometer from your target, which is outrageously much. And only when you're doing single target at super close range you can actually outperform beams. So I will need to rewatch the video. Okay. Um. hmm. So generally, beams are way easier, quite possibly, or usually stronger too. On all the average runs, you will just perform better with beams. Even if you do fly perfectly, you basically lose with cannons. There's no real way around this. Um, but cannons are strong enough to beat the current advanced content. If you run HSE, you will see how this is not really true anymore. How you basically have to run beams to actually get into range of finishing the mission easily. I mean, we are looking for the easiest way to do it here. Can do it with cannons, but it's not optimal. So what I would do is I would go for attack pattern Omega 3 if you have a good debuffed run, or attack pattern Beta 3 if you don't have a good debuffed run. That hardly depends on your team. If you don't have a pre-made team, running Beta can be fine, especially if you don't have a Zamok. You want to do this layout where you run Beta 3, Beta 1, and then just go for 2 Scatter Volleys here, and just use them alternatingly. And I personally wouldn't recommend using different types of weapons. May that be dual heavy cannons, light cannons, normal cannons, arrays, dual beams, and torpedoes all at the same time, which is what you see on so many streams. It's not actually good. I know people do that, and I always feel like you don't want to do that. Okay, it's not actually worth that. Um, so I would put in just another dual heavy cannon, or if you really want to maximize DPS, put in all beams. Dual beams is fine if you run 3 Omnis, or arrays if you want to have it easier and you can keep your defense up higher. There's some misconception going on lately because the high-end DPS runs mostly show dual beam banks these days, but that is not actually because dual beams deal so much more damage than single arrays do. That is more of a positioning thing for us. Hollow Frog, for example, he uses arrays and he got like 145, 150 or so before the league reset. After that, now we didn't really do that much because it's just lagging too much to actually play the game. But yeah, you are basically fine with arrays too. Like the difference is really small. Okay, so the Intel team, yeah, you can have that. That's alright. The high yield torpedo, I would put that one in too, just for a trigger of all hands on deck, which I explained in the last stream, I think. Didn't see that and have the trait. Might want to recap on that. So this is basically what you could do with your tactical abilities. If you want to really optimize, go for Fire at Will here, and another tag team might be better, really, just to make sure that you have one all the time. Engineering side is perfect, like this is what it looks like all the time if you're really pushing for damage. If you have trouble staying alive, you can also put in a auxiliary to structural integrity field 1 here, instead of the directed energy modulation. That one is only really worth it if you have Marion Francis on, and it's good for your DPS, but it's not super strong. Another engineering team at the Anson Universal theoretically could make this a tactical officer too, just to get the Romulan bonus out of him, the 2% crit H and 5% crit D. That would be fine too. The science intel, you might put in. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, you have these nice intel slots, so I would not put in the torpedo thing, but in true override subsystem safeties to give you the maximum power increase when you are actually trying to deal damage. This gives you no, version number 2 I think gives you 30 to your maximum cap, so your weapons will be at like 155 instead of 125. That is really good for your damage. It will then diminish over 20 seconds, and when it finishes, it puts one of your subsystems offline. But the engineering team has an immunity to subsystems offline, so when it's about to run out, you just give yourself the tag team and the engineering team, and then your subsystems will all stay on. So yeah, this is a nice synergy that I would use. Lieutenant Science, you could put in another override subsystems and get a hazard 1. You could also run this, that is perfectly fine. Okay, now looking at your equipment more closely, what do you have here? The neutronic torpedo, the weapons with ACC damage to, so probably fleet weaponry. For cannons, that is sorta okay, but try keeping in mind that your scatter volley shouldn't really benefit from accuracy overflow too, just like Fire at Will and excuse me, and torpedo spread. So theoretically, the modifiers that you are looking for would be crit D as much as you can, and penetration. Bracket pen, there it is. So that would be either 3, 1. I don't know why I can't put a 1 there. Or you could also go for crit D4. If you don't have that much debuff in ruler, you should go for pen on all your weapons. That would be okay. So theoretically, what you would do is go for beam erase, crit D3 pen. There we go. Something like this. Save it. Okay. I don't know. It didn't. Okay, just imagine these all to be arrays of the same sort for D3 pens. You always want to put in a kinetic cutting beam. I think it's listed here under the Omega reputation. You get that one. The kinetic cutting beam gets a very strong synergy with the assimilated module, which gives you a 2-piece bonus that reduces the drain on your weapons based on a proc. So always put those two in, like all energy damage builds. Always will have that. So I don't know why it doesn't really refresh properly. Even for the build you're currently running, you want to have the omnidirectional cutting beam and the assimilated module. So on your ship's equipment, you run the Omega Force. I am not even entirely sure what that does. I think it's the AoE invisibility thing. I probably have it on 1 tune or so. Okay, so possible good options are assimilated 2-piece, deflector and impulse engine, plus dice and shield. That is extremely good defensive-wise, and what you want if you run average groups. A little more offensive would be assimilated deflector and assimilated shields, also giving you the 2-piece there, which gives you a very strong hull regen and a very strong hull regen proc. And you would put in the Romulan engines to get the buff to attack patterns. That is basically a little more offensive. And those are really the ones I would recommend right now. I know people love to run the Nukara set, which we did at some point, but really you only get 2.5% more damage out of it. And it's not worth sacrificing like 40% of your survivability just for that little damage. It's just not worth it. Okay. I really have to eat this later, I guess. Warp core, I would put in the one of the Spire. You have the Plasmonic Leech, that gives you power, and with the new Asuka trait, you basically never run into any trouble with your power. So I would go for the Elite Fleet Plasma Integrated. This one, I don't really know about the stats now, but it looks like this. You want the weapons to auxiliary because the weapons to shields is bugged, and when you upgrade it to epic, you get weapons to shields times 2, but that is not working. So just make sure that you get weapons to auxiliary on this. This one could be the Romulan, what is it called? Romulan prototype, there we go. One would be the assimilated. Theoretically, you could with the dice and shield and put in the other assimilated 2-piece. This is just basically what I run on all my tunes these days. Okay. So this console is not worth slotting. I know so many people have this, but the synergy of torpedoes and other weapons at the same time is not that good. So if you don't use it for this specific torpedo, this console becomes entirely obsolete. Just put in the assimilated module here, I guess. So this with beam weapons that you can't really see, but you know. Also, make sure that in your tactical slots, you only slot tactical consoles. Don't put in the Kobali console into your tech consoles. Just make sure that you have all of them AP and vulnerability locator if you run AP weapons. So this one would be another vulnerability locator. Why are there two there? Oh, Mark 12 and 13. Okay, yeah, that doesn't matter. Just do it like this. I would get rid of this console. The emitter array is just useless. I mean, it's not 100% useless, but it's 99% useless. And put in the Kobali console here. I don't actually know the name of it now. This one could be the 0-point energy conduit if you're looking for a cheap thing, or you could put in the Tachyo. What is it called? The Tachyokinetic converter, looking like this. And this one theoretically could be the Bioneural infusion circuit. This one. Okay, so that would be the most offensive thing that you could build. But in this game, defense really comes from using abilities and having the assimilated two-piece on. So you're better off in general if you build it like this than if you try to build it with consoles. Consoles on your defensive side don't really give you much of a benefit. The ground stuff is not really something I can look into that quickly. TR is fine. Two-piece here is fine, giving you the strong defensive. Probably good there. Skill tree. Okay. So, make sure to not put points into projectile weapons if you don't run any. And if you run any, question yourself, like, why are you doing this? If you have a very good reason and really know what you're doing, you can do stuff like that, but for now, I would just get rid of this. Always fill out your attack patterns, as this is attack pattern alpha, attack pattern omega, and beta. Those are like the strongest ones, so that's really helping. Starship batteries at 9, you have the RMC, red matter capacitor. That can be done. Driver core at 9 looks a little excessive. 6, probably fine too. 9 is okay, yeah, we can do this. Electroplasma system is on all energy damage builds. Always something you want to have maxed out. Always put 9 into this. Warp core potential, the last 3 ones are not really benefiting you that much. If you have the Astica trait, you don't need many performance skills really that much anymore. I would go with 6 here on basically all my tunes. That is what I'm doing. You get a decimal change here, like you don't actually see your power jump by even 1 for putting the last 3 points in. Auxiliary performance is something I usually have at 3 or 6. Armor reinforcements is against kinetic damage, so this one is more important than hull plating. Because the Borg don't actually kill you with beams, they kill you with either torpedoes or core breaches. The rest of this is looking pretty good. Impulse thrusters is probably good at 6. Subsystem repair is a PvP thing and against Tholians. So in general PvE combat you're probably more than okay with 3 in here. But what you really want to look into is flow capacitors, because I saw that you had the plasmonic leech console, and this one gives you power directly relating to your flow capacitor skill. You get 1 power per shot, and if you skilled out the flow capacitors like this, you get 2 power per shot. So this just doubled your benefit from 8 to 16. This is pretty good. You don't actually need inertial dampeners in PvE. That is a thing in Viscous Cycle, when they do this gravity wellish thing on you, but you have attack pattern omega, you have evasives, and you don't actually benefit much from it, so I would just save a few points here. You could theoretically put more into power insulators. You could also put it into particle generators, giving you more of a chance for variety later on, or just going straight for defense with the armor reinforcements and the other Starship performances. So that is something like this. What I would do just about now. Ground spec is not really concerned. Starship traits, inspirational leader is very expensive there. You have a lot of defensive ones here. I don't really like how you can't see the names here. You still want to use the armor penetration one because it debuffs for your whole team 5. At 5 players, that is 25, which is a constant beta 1. So yeah, keep that going. Omnia kinetic shearing, since you don't want to run torpedoes, don't get that one in. Use the precision, increasing all your critical hit chance by 4%. That one is very strong due to the synergy of crit H and crit D scaling so massively. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you should watch the video series that I did that is 5 hours long. And the last defensive one here should or could be the auxiliary power configuration offense, which takes your auxiliary power and converts it into more damage. 100 auxiliary power award you 5% more total damage. That is pretty good, really. You want that one in. And this one should be the crit D trait, I hope. Since I don't see another one, that is what you want to do, yeah. Also, I saw rumors about how you could potentially use the one that scales with effectiveness the less HP your enemy has, but keep in mind that that one does not properly stack on the target, so only one player awards the minus on it. And so theoretically, if one ran it, and on average it's like minus 7.5, but really, just don't go for it. I don't see it being worth it. Okay. Starship Trades, Beam Barrage might be good, Failsafe Scrambler might be good. Fluidic Cocoon is very good because those spheres always shoot torpedoes at you. Inspirational Leader is expensive but good. Okay, those should be the major ones that you want to look into. I personally wouldn't put in the Crippling Fire. That is not really worth it. The Death Cannoneer, increasing your turn rate something. Not really worth it either. And I think Intimidating Strikes is something about torpedoes, right? I remember reading on this the other day. Tends to confuse targets. Yeah, not really worth it either. Okay, don't see any duty officers. What I would do is have at least 2 or 3 damage control engineers to be able to cycle emergency power to shields 1 and emergency power to weapons 3. Each time you use one, you get a CD reduction on the other, or on both actually, possibly, which is why you need multiple ones. Get a very good chance of reducing the cooldowns. And what this enables you to do is have a constant, hopefully, emergency power to weapons 3 up. That is better than having emergency power to weapons 3 and 1 and having to drop to the lower tier every now and then, you know. So I would just go for 2 damage control engineers, go for 1 Zamok to get the attack pattern Omega. If you don't have it, you can just go with betas here and be good without a duty officer for them. 2 betas is fine on its own. Then you could go for a space warfare duty officer, increasing base damage to Borg by 10%. You could also go for the con officer that reduces your evasives cooldown, which is actually not that bad in later runs if you have good DPS going. So let me actually page that I currently have. Okay, this is horrible. I have some torpedo guys in. That one needs to go away, and one also has to go away. Where is my con officer? Okay. And then you would go for Marin Francis. So this is what I usually run when I'm playing. I run the Space Warfare, 1 Zamok, 1 Con Officer, 1 Marin Francis, and 2 of those damage control engineers. That seems like one of the most solid possible. There are other possibilities, but it's really not that mandatory. Okay, guess that should wrap it up for you. Then just one more quick thing. The gem hit our strike ship. And I couldn't bring myself to buying one because, you know, this layout of 4 and 3 weapons and 5 tech consoles, it's okay, but it's really not that surprisingly super overpowered. Um, it's okay, but it's not amazing. And the trade is for cannon rapid fire only, which is not stackable with the Azteca trade. So, um, the Azteca trade gives you a lot of subsystem power, seems really good right now. Um, so I would always go for AoE abilities like Scatter Volley, which procs it, or Fire at Will, which also procs it. And I just managed to log into my other Federation tool. Also show you the amazing bridge officers that he doesn't have anymore. But the Starship traits that I run, I'm personally running right now the All Hands on Deck, recharge time reduction on Science and Captain abilities, Reciprocity for the tactical abilities, Pedal to the Metal for damage when you are at full throttle, and the Supremacy of the Azteca. Those ones seem to be the really strong ones. If you want to have more defense, you could either go for Battle Ready or Desperate Pass instead of the Pedal to the Metal. That is usually how I changed that. I didn't really get. Okay, so 2 Fire at Wills here. Attack pattern beta. This one is the intelligence. So theoretically, if you have this on a Federation tune and get the reciprocity, which also reduces the cooldown of your intel abilities, I would put override subsystem 3 here. If you don't have it, probably just 2 Fight Will 3s here on Romulan. Then we would go for let's assume we are on a Federation tune, right? We can basically put now whatever we want here. We could put in the cannon, scatter volley. We can just slot a lot of trigger abilities for all hands on deck. Something like this could be done. If you don't get that much aggro and you want to make sure that it's working properly, get in a second Fire at Will, probably like this, as a backup. And if you are sure they won't shoot at you, probably just go for Fire at Will 3 and put in the lower tier of override subsystem safeties. Come on, don't select everything. I personally would put in the override 3 and another Fire at Will. The Anson engineering is basically dependent on what you do up top here. For a not so much crowd control-y guy, you probably would put the lieutenant commander and engineer to get your hands on emergency Part 2 weapons 3. If you are fancy and want to deal damage, go for directed energy modulation. If you feel more defensive, go for auxiliary to structural integrity here. And the last one can be whatever you want, probably the engineering team. This one should be your science then. It is also command, which could be the ambush point marker. This is a good ability, and then this one would have to be the hazard emitters, cleanse you off of plasma fires. Another possibility could be to go with more of a crowd control-y guy. So you would put this one, your engineer, go in weapons, go in ambush point marker, put this one a science, get in gravity well. Where's the gravity well? Where the G is. Gravity well, TBR, and hazard emitters. Okay, so this is the other alternative that I see. This one has more potential of crowd controlling, so if they ever bring back no win scenario, which they hopefully will, this one would be a good layout for that, or, you know, just general fanciness of it, doing more side damage. You have the science trait, this one could potentially be worth it. Weapons would be beams, dual beams or single arrays is fine. Omnis in the back if you have dual beams. Deflector and shields, assimilated 2-piece, impulse with the Romulan, warp core, plasma integrated, engineering consoles. Okay, well, we basically had that already. The standard as always. Okay, so 5 tank consoles. So that is how I would build this ship if I had it. If someone decides, to just give me one, I'll definitely show you what it does in ISA. Um, but I am not quite certain I will get one, so no promises there. So I wanted to do one more thing, which would be the CCA event, because I didn't do mine today, and I thought you might just enjoy, seeing what it looks like from my perspective. Let me quickly my bridge officers. Fired will to make sure that we have enough fired wool going. Hazard emitters there. One would be this gravity well, and this one can be transfer shield strength. This one should be emergency part of weapons. One would be directed energy modulation, and this one is shields. Okay. We have our duty officers in D2. Okay. And since I don't know if you guys read the patch notes, but I didn't see it. I didn't see it being announced. But what they did is they changed it. If you fail in a CCA, you actually get your cooldown on it. They didn't have that in before. It just happened to me on Thursday. I don't actually know why they did it. If they just want to discourage me from pugging it. But yeah, I still try pugging it just for the fun of it. We are missing the emergency part weapons on the tray. And that is quite understandable as it's back to engines, or I just clicked. Okay. So what happens is, you want to fly in here, I use the duty officer that pulls the enemies towards me, and I drag them into the CCA, grab while everything there, and then just hit them with all I've got with the Nadian bomb. Something like this, and I probably shouldn't have done it that quickly just to die like, before I can even shoot it properly. But that is general concept. If you're on a ground map, you spawn in more quickly because you don't see the animation. And most people in space combat don't really know that yet. So if you do just jump in, you are the only target within range usually. Don't do that, don't suicide. Not a good thing. So we'll just stay out of range here. Our damage thing to it. Which gives me time to read on what that. We love the 5-hour long video. Yeah, I like it too. I just feel that it's way too long. I mean, I understand why people can't really watch it, but I would hope they would watch it more at the same time. I'm just flying out of range, just to make sure I to the blast with 30% hull, and this is not getting awesome here. I shouldn't run this in the full glass cannon build, which we were rolling on earlier. Okay, so I have just determined why I'm dying. And this is basically what you shouldn't do. Always go for the defensive set, because it is not worth it dying all the time. And you can always slot the Kobali console if you have a sort of free slot for it. You, however, always want those consoles that are still on, basically. Okay. So. Now that we have produced enough shame and disgrace for ourselves, we shall try to redeem it with a nice Nadian bomb. Hope the NPCs appreciate the love. Okay. For the second wave, I tried to preserve my barrel roll or rock and roll. I probably could have done it without just saving it because, the damage on the random runs is not really that high that you get into trouble there. But if you run on a 10k plus team, quite likely want to preserve it for the second shockwave. Okay, making us immune to the second wave here. Okay. We just continue shooting it. Well, this has been a horrible run. I thought the higher DPS ships were rocking the intelligence power that supercharged your crit hit rate. No. The crit hit rate thing is surgical strikes. That is a strong single target ability which deals possibly about as much damage as fire at will. But that's about as far as you can take it. And in an AoE situation, you basically lose all the time. So there's really no point in running it unless you PvP or want to kill a single target. What about TBR? TBR is fancy, but the damage contribution of it is not that big a deal. If you know very well what you're doing and, you know, are okay with suiciding, that can be done. But on the average run, you just don't really benefit from it. Ryan, I don't know if you can read the question I asked above. I'll write again. With which consoles would you substitute the two lobby ones in a scimitar? First answer to that is Valdor console. The Valdor console is insanely strong on the defensive side, so I think it's tier 4. Tier 4, apparently not. Might be tier 3, there we go. The Valdor Heavy Warbird gives you this console that heals your shields. That one is amazing. If you can get that console, go get that console. Second answer is put in either of the ones that are good. I don't really know what you have. So the 0 point is good. The damage contribution really quickly drops down after this. You could put in a flow console to help your amp if you don't have the Astaca trait. You could go for EPS flow if you are really running into trouble. But yeah. That is usually what you're looking at. I hope they will make the Science Embassy consoles better again, so you actually have something to stuff in if you don't have anything else. The Kombali passive one is really cool too. If you have this one and just don't have anything else to put in, you can definitely go for this console. The 26% passive healing increase and the outrageous on-use effect are quite good, really. Run on a random team, this can save you. Which is why if I do CCA on a random group, I have this console in mostly, because 2% crit H is, you know, it is good, but this console really has a big impact. It's way stronger than all the armor things. I have the Valdor assimilated 0 point plasmonic and I need 2 more. Let me switch to my scimitar. This is taken for. Just wish they would release a Federation version of that God console. It's not actually a God console. Like, you still die with it. But yeah, I see where you're coming from. I wish they would release a Federation variant of the scimitar. I don't know if it will happen though, so I just stick with what they put out. So if I wouldn't have the Tachyo and the Bioneural, you quickly get limited. I would put in one with the Kobali console, as that really helps your survivability. And then I would probably put in another science console of the embassy just for the flow capacitors. Uh, Also, another possibility would be an EPS flow to help you with your power transfer rate, but there aren't really that many extremely good consoles that come to my mind very quickly here. Um, not on the not on the Lobby store. You could go for the crafted consoles like the Field Exeter and the Enhanced RCS with flow or something, or yeah, that's probably what you're looking at. Like, you get into trouble. The same as the Valor, can you run both? I have no idea what's going on. It worked well outside the conference lounge. Wrong instance. Thanks for the answer. I'll see what I can get from those suggestions. Kobali is a free... What? The Kobali is a free version of that, I guess. The Kobali is hull healing, not shield. That's the difference. And the Kobali also gives you a passive regen to your healings. It increases all hull healing by 26%, which is engineering, team, hazard emitters, auxiliary to structural. And I hope even the buffs of assimilated, but I'm not entirely positive on this. Okay. The crafted ones aren't really that good, like, don't get me wrong, that is just what you put in if you don't have the Tachyo and the Bioneural Infusion. The Bioneural Infusion and the Tachyo are extremely good consoles. You get 25% crit severity, and you get 12.5 crit severity and 1.2% crit chance. That stacks up so massively with your weapons having crit D3 penetration or crit D4 on them, so that with your Romulans on your ship and a crit rate of almost like 40%, they really contribute a lot to your damage. So I would definitely suggest you get those if you can at some point, as soon as possible. Alright, so that should hopefully conclude the stream for today. It has been longer than I first thought. I hope that is alright with you guys. If you do have any more questions, shoot me an in-game mail. I'll try to be back at some point in the future. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, because I will try to announce it there. Also in-game. And I'll put this to YouTube, so if you have missed any of it, just go there to rewatch it. And Esri, your thoughts on counter command deflector? What is the counter? Ah, yeah, I know what the counter command deflector is. I actually have it. One. It's not worth it. That should answer the question. Let me think of a spot where I would use it. Outside of a torpedo boat, because it actually gives you 20 projectile weapons training. Nah, not even there. I wouldn't run it. I know it has been a thing when you run this, the Romulan engine at the fleet shield, and you just don't go for any shields at all, but from my perspective, that's not worth it. Go for the assimilated two-piece if you need a defensive one. Go for the defensive two-piece assimilated and the Dyson shield if you need even more. Or you could put in the Nukara thing that is still more than the 10 weapons training, so yeah, there's no reason to go for this. Okay, so if you have any questions, shoot me an in-game mail. If you have any thoughts, want me to do anything, you know, all this sort of stuff, make sure to get a hold of me and tell me about it, because I will try to accommodate it. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I wish you a beautiful evening, and I'll be back. at some point. Good evening, everyone.